Hi, it's Michael Kerr here, presenting Small Business Banter. A healthy micro and small business sector means a successful economy and a more vibrant society. Small Business Banter is about helping regional business owners better prepare for current challenges, but also for the next stage of business success. I'm Michael Kerr, founder of Kerr Capital, advisors to business owners. Each week, I interview a fellow small business owner or an expert, and they share their stories, their lived experiences, the wins and the losses, and their best advice to help you, the listener, get the most you can from your own business. Small Business Banter is brought to you from the studios of 104.7 Gippsland FM and is heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network. And thanks also to Kerr Capital, supporters of the show. Welcome into another edition of Small Business Banter Community Radio and Podcast. Ross Cameron from the Cameron Research Group is my guest today. So welcome in, Ross.
Thank you, Mike. Good to be here.
Excellent. Ross, your business, Cameron Research, the reason we're talking is because for nearly 30 years you've been researching small business owners on behalf of bigger organisations. So you've got a lot of understanding and knowledge about how small business owners think. And that's what we're all about on this program. So you started that, say 30 years ago, something like a couple of thousand face-to-face interviews, 700 focus groups, and you're doing that on behalf of organisations to give them better insights to SME and SME owners particularly. So, do you want to just give us just a couple of minutes on your background? I'm particularly interested in how you got started and why you got started in small business research.
Yeah,
small and medium enterprise.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Well, look, I did just a generic sort of business commerce degree back in the 80s, like so many of us oldies would have. And I worked for a company that does similar sort of research to what I do now. It's changed names and iterations, called BIS Shrapnel. And I worked there for a few years and then went overseas and did a master's degree. And when I came back to Australia, I had all these great ways, Mike, I was going to make $1 quadrillion. But in the meantime, I needed some cash flow to actually kick me off. So I thought, look, I'll do a little bit of market research, because it was stuff that I sort of understood whilst I get some of these other businesses up and running. And what I found was that I basically stuck with the market research and didn't focus on the other businesses, which tells us something about small business owners and strategy setting, which I'll touch on in a moment. So, look, even then though, mate, if we go back to 1992 where I first started my business, there was no one really focusing on small or medium-sized businesses.
Yeah.
Even market researchers were focusing on consumers. No one was really giving SMEs the time of day. And I just found that completely bizarre. You've got 97, 98% of the businesses in the country have less than 20 people, and nobody was actually interested in what they have to say. I find that just extraordinary.
Yeah. So you saw that as an opportunity, clearly, but have you further and more deeply connected with these SME owners, since 92? I mean, it might have started as a bit of something you wanted to raise some cash, but
absolutely. I mean, and the more you do something, the more you become an expert in it, and the more that you see things that have possibly always been there, but after a decade, you look back and say, "Geez, I just missed that." And so there's all these sort of like these quite deep insights about the psychology and the behaviour of people running businesses that you miss when you're starting up, that sort of emerge over time. And look, my clients are all big companies that sell to SMEs, and so they're in a different world. They don't get small or medium-sized businesses. They realise they don't get small or medium-sized businesses. They aren't one. They're a big company. They want to grow. SMEs don't necessarily want to grow, and so there's just a world apart. And so that's where I come into it, sort of helping them to understand, as I say, the psychology and the behaviour of small or medium-sized business owners.
Yeah, look, the one of the areas we're going to discuss real briefly is the emotional part of ownership, and so that runs deep, and it's a big part of it. But in terms of the clients you work for, they're bigger organisations. Do you think we're making progress in understanding SMEs? I say that because they government, everyone else talks about SMEs being the backbone. Do you think we're making progress? Do you think there are lost opportunities there, to better serve the SME market?
Yeah, look, most of my work is at a sort of a corporate level more than a government level. So,
right.
So my clients tend to be, for instance, big banks and those sort of crowds who, absolutely they're making progress. I mean, there's people who are going to be listening to this call thinking, mate, they're going backwards. But I don't think that's the case. I think they are absolutely making progress and have made progress. I mean, when I first started my business in 1992, we were just emerging from a recession, and small businesses had been murdered.
Yeah.
In that recession. I mean, we've learned a lot from that. So no, look, things are changing, things are developing, but also, Mike, it's quite interesting because if you've got a big company that doesn't get it, you're going to, now in this day and age, you're going to get a little provider, a challenger brand that comes up and tries to do it differently, and tries to do it better without the legacy baggage of those big companies. And so there's a lot more competitive pressure on those bigger companies now than there has been in the past.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, let's cut straight to you. On LinkedIn, you've in recent months posted a couple of really interesting snapshots of some of the wisdom that you've garnered from SME owners, and also some of the humour. I mean, with all those face-to-face interviews. So, do you want to let's start with some of that hard-won coalface wisdom that really struck a chord with you, that came straight out of the mouths of owners?
Yeah.
And what were your favourites?
Yeah, look, I mean, I love these people that run businesses. I mean, this is why I can still do it, Mike. I mean, literally, I've done 3,000 face-to-face interviews. And as you said up front, 700 focus groups. You can't do that unless you've got a passion for what you do. And I have a passion because these people are my heroes. Because people who run a business, they can take it in the ring, they get knocked down, but I tell you, the next day they've got to get themselves up, dust themselves off, and bloody show up again. And it is not easy. And they do not have the protection of a bigger business. They are out there, and it's hard and it's tough. And as anybody who's running a business listening to this knows, when things are going really well, you're king of the world. It's fantastic. You wouldn't swap it for quids. But geez, when things are down, you look in the mirror, and that great song, Nowhere to Run To, Baby, Nowhere to Hide, that's like that, So I never lose my energy for these people because they've got this great earthiness about them. They're passionate about what they do. They take themselves seriously, and so they should. They're putting their heart and soul into it, but they're real characters. I've met some fantastic characters of people who run businesses, and they're so, as I say, earthy and down to earth. They're ruggedly independent. They don't like being told what to do, especially by people who, are sitting in an office, and never get dirt under the fingernails, So it's full on.
Yeah, and that, the resilience, or that, when they do look in the mirror, most of the time it's up to them when they look back at themselves to get whatever needs to be done done. So I think you talked about you had some headlines, and one of them amongst many was that that they have a different view of risk. That then you went on to say that they are incredibly emotional, and I wanted to kind of we said we'd come back to that. Is that what just drives them to start and keeps them going? Is that emotional? Take it personally. They connect with their customers or not. They let them know if.
Yeah, I would agree to some extent. I mean, I think that they start their business because they can see an angle. They can see a different or better way of doing things. It's not just the same old. They've got an angle, right? And that's the risk issue that I talked about, because the point about risk is it's easy to look at a business owner and say, they're risk seekers, they're nuts. They're not that way at all. Business owners actually not necessarily risky in other aspects of their life. But when it comes to running a business, there was just an opportunity, or there is an opportunity that to them almost makes common sense. So it's not as though they're hardwired for taking greater risks. It's just that they saw such an opportunity. They didn't think it was the risk that it is. And so that's also wonderful and engaging about them. Look, I mean, I guess one of the other things is that in the emotions about it, if we talk about the emotions, I mean, there's positives and negatives to this, Mike. But one of the great learnings of mine over the 30 years is that most people that run a business, particularly that run a small business, don't actually want to grow it. Now, that's where you might say the emotions come in, because if you look at this from an outsider's perspective, if you look at this from the perspective of my clients who are big companies, they all want to grow, right? Small business owners don't necessarily want to grow. And in fact, I've just finished a study right now quantifying this. I've always said it's about 20%. Look, 17% of these businesses that we interviewed actually, at the end of the day, they want to grow. There's 83% that actually are trying to achieve different things. It's not about business growth. Now, some would say that's not rational, that's not logical. To a business owner, it's perfectly logical. They're trying to achieve other things, which we can talk about if you're interested.
I'd love to talk about those other things.
Yeah. Well, look, there's two other things there's two other groups of business owner that we're talking about. One is, so leave aside the ones that want to grow.
Yep.
Right. There's two others that remain. You've got one group that really wanted to achieve and maintain a particular lifestyle. That doesn't mean they don't want to run a fair income business, by the way. They absolutely do, but they just, when push comes to shove, they're just not going to prepare to do what it's going to take to get the business to the next level. So that's your lifestyle seekers. That's about half of the businesses out there. And then you've got about sort of 30-odd%, maybe a bit more, and they're just really into their craft. So we call them the passionate professionals. And what I mean by that, they take it all very seriously. And I'm actually one of them. They're the weirdest group. That's where I fit in. So sure, I could do a whole lot of stuff to grow my business, but if I grow my business, I'm doing less research. I'm out there speaking to people and listening to people less. So I'm actually not prepared to do what it takes to grow my business beyond a certain point. Now, what's interesting about this is you're basically therefore, so I'm saying that about 80-odd% of business owners don't want to grow their business. They want to make more money. They certainly want to have a better lifestyle, want to have more free time, blah, blah. But it's not just about business growth. And so, society puts a lot of pressure on these people. If you're not growing, you're dying. I mean, get off it. What crap.
Yeah.
Honestly, it really annoys me because it's other people projecting their perceptions onto you. And all these business owners will be listening to this thinking, yeah, I don't particularly want to grow. I'd like to make more money. I'd like to have more spare time.
Be more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. But am I prepared to really do what it's going to take? No, I'm not, because it's going to cost me too much on a personal level. And there's nothing wrong with that. And so society can really get freaked about it, but that's where business owners are at, mate.
Yeah, well, as you know, I deal with owners every day. It is something that comes up. I've never, I'd be fascinated by that research, and 8 out of 10 is quite extraordinary, but it doesn't surprise me in the least. Underpinning that is always a few tensions, as you say. It's the tension coming from all this, noise to, if you're not growing, you're going backwards, and so there is, inevitably there's a bit of energy that gets burned up, dealing with that and questioning yourself. And sadly, or, realistically, that's just, they have to get, comfortable with kind of just saying no. I'm not even going to listen to it, let alone, think about implementing it. But the second part that really, I really admire is many of the owners I've come across in that mindset. The key to it all is that they've kind of got a reason for being in business, which is partly about supporting a lifestyle, and they know the business can deliver that for them. And if it's at a certain level and it's delivering on their lifestyle, and they can fund whatever expenses and lifestyle things out of it, and give them the time and flexibility. And sometimes it's more about flexibility than just outright time. But that level of consciousness is, I think it's incredible, and that's one of the powerful reasons to be in a small business, because you do have the capacity to direct that.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. It's very interesting to me that we read about the Great Resignation. This massive proportion of people that are employees that are looking to switch job over the next 6 months or whatever because they've come out of the lockdowns and they've had a gutful. What I found, if we go back literally 2 years now, okay, so we're sort of it's currently sort of May, kicking around May, June now. So if we go back 2 years ago from now, we're just sort of like entering lockdown period or emerging from sort of like that first batch of COVID. And I tell you what, it's amazing how many business owners I was speaking to who are actually really reevaluating where they're at in their life and their business. And so this Great Resignation, business owners are onto this about a year and a half before most employees, especially at the micro end of the market, Mike. So especially businesses that are sole traders or that are very small, only got a handful of people, those people are en masse sat back with some time. Sometimes they had time that they'd never had before and thought to themselves, am I really doing what I'm on this earth to do? Is this really what I want to be doing? And so that's exactly what we're talking about here. We're talking about people that have got control of where they're at, right? They don't want to be lectured to. It's their life and it's their agenda. And good luck to them. But certainly the last couple of years, it's sort of pushed some of this thinking even further down the track.
Yeah. Hey, and on today's edition of Small Business Banter Community Radio and Podcast, chatting with Ross Cameron from Cameron Research Group. Ross, I think there was a couple of, we're very much in sync in agreeing that there are powerful reasons, to want to be in business and to stay in business. And as you just described, there's people that are even further questioning in that, questioning what they're about and who they are. And I think that's, it's potentially afforded by being in a small business. But some of the other things that you highlighted that I was really fascinated about, this is, a compilation of your 30 years, the issue of, not to take it down, but loneliness that does come up a lot, and it's not for everybody, and there's it can be very incredibly lonely, no escape, but they on a positive note they still get a lot of oxygen out of chatting to their customers. So do you want to just talk briefly about the loneliness? And we've had several episodes of this podcast, chatting with people from Beyond Blue, etc. And there's always resources around if this is kind of raising something for an owner or someone else listening in. But
absolutely,
your thoughts on that.
Look, this is a really powerful one to me, Mike. I mean, I can remember a focus group. If you'll humour me with this story, this would be 2005, I reckon. And I was just on the cusp of thinking. Well, I was thinking about doing a piece of research that was really going to drill into the mindset of the business owner, but I hadn't quite sort of got over the line. Anyway, I'm doing this focus group, and this woman, God bless her, we're up in Queensland, and she said after the intros and all that sort of preliminary banter, we would be 1 minute into the actual focus group, and this woman said, it's a leading indicator. She said, well, I don't know about anybody else here. When somebody says that, they're lining up with a big one, right? 1 minute in. I don't know about anybody else here, but I find being a small business owner the loneliest place in the world. And off she went with this tale of woe, how she was renovating her house, she was battling with her teenage daughter. And that morning somebody had rung in. She ran a couple of cafes. Somebody had rung in, not turning up for work today. Can't come in. So all of a sudden she's running around, she's frying up eggs, she's trying to run the business, and she's like, this is just crazy. And the story was an interesting one because I said to her, so what did you do? And she said, well, look, I got to sort of like once we got over the initial rush, I went out the back and sat in my car and just bawled my eyes out. And we got talking in this focus group. We're still at the very start of it, Mike. And she said that she went back into the workplace and she said everybody could see that she looked a mess, but nobody asked her how she was. And she said, you ask me why, what it's like running a business. It is the loneliest place in the world. And I've never, ever forgotten that beautiful, heartfelt story. And I come across this all the time.
Yeah.
That business owners, they're ruggedly individual and they like it that way, but also they're loners. They're not a member of another tribe.
Yeah.
They are their tribe. And, mate, I don't want to get overly intense with you, but this is pretty heavy, right? When things aren't going well, it is a very, very difficult place to be and a very lonely place to be. And business owners need to stay connected with other business owners in particular, because no one understands the blows. No one can really call it like another business owner. We all know that.
Yep.
And so it's really important that people stay connected with their buddies and other business owners, and physically or even online. Because it is a very isolating place to be. So that's what I meant by that they are the loneliest people, because they are.
Yeah, and in past episodes we've talked with people from various state or federal government mentoring organisations, fueled by ex-business owners. So Reach Out, small business mentoring service in Victoria is an example, and we had the rise of advisory boards are not because you do need support. So you can check out some of those past episodes. But that's there's a lot of highs and lows, so that we've chatted about those, but then there can be right back at it. Because there's the sniff of a deal, or there's something exciting happening in the business, and they respond and get back on it.
Absolutely. And look, something you touched on before, Mike, was the oxygen they get from their customer interactions. I mean, this is another choice one. You spend so much time doing crap when you're running a business that it's those customer interactions that actually give these people, that refires these people faith as Christ, this is why I do it after all.
Yeah.
I've got one guy that I speak to, and he's a dentist, and he teared up when he was telling me this. He said, he's got one of his patients is like some 90-year-old woman, and she said to him, you're so gentle with me, and you talk to me in such a respectful way. I can't believe that anybody speaks to me like this. It's just such a delight coming here. That to him is gold. And so for business owners to have that sort of hands-on interaction with customers, it reminds them why they do it. And unfortunately, as the business grows, you get away from that, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the great joys of running a business. So as the business grows, if that's what you want, you've got to somehow replace that kick with another kick, because you lose it.
Yeah, you do. At some point, you don't have everything you need to go to the next level, and recognizing that is something that's a bit of a skill, but is often enhanced when you talk to others, and as you say, especially other business owners, and they're who have been through it. I just want to quickly, we don't have too much time left, but one of the other notable things was I'll just call these two. Business strategy emerges incrementally. So, on the run. And I think,
What I was talking about there, Mike, very briefly, is the fact that, it's easy for an outsider to look at a business, especially in sort of historical terms, and say, oh, well, they had a strategy and it emerged over, it was very clear what they were going to do. But it's not like that. Business owners get out in the paddock, they try to get a kick and realise the wind's blowing a different direction, they're playing a different game, and they've just got to adapt.
Yeah.
Right? And so it really does emerge incrementally, even though a rationalist would think that it doesn't. That's just the way that it is. So you've got to be open-minded too. I guess that's the other implication of that.
Yeah, and I think, with these bigger organisations, listening in or, servicing SMEs, that's how it is. And setting a strategy for 3 to 5 years, is not something that a lot of SME owners, sure, they probably should do it.
Yeah.
But, there are other ways. So, keep that in mind. Hey, then there was one finding that, employing a CEO or a managing director never ended well.
Look, this is a bit brutal of me. Yeah. I'm sure it does end well. Look, I reckon in a fraction of the times I've seen it happen, it's worked. But more often than not, I hate to be negative, but more often than not, what happens is the business owners will get in somebody else to run the business, to be the CEO, so they can go off and live their lives and whatever. But the reason why the business has been successful is because they're control freaks.
Yeah.
So somebody comes in, an external manager, and says, okay, well, I want to do A, B, and C. And the control freak says, you're not doing that. We haven't done it that way for the last 20 years. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And so there's this tension, and it's very, very difficult for business owners to employ somebody else to truly run the business independently.
Yeah, it's such a tiny, close environment. on paper everything can look like a great fit. If you don't get on with them, or it's culturally not that often doesn't get looked at in those decisions. Hey, just in the last couple of minutes, you obviously have a lot of laughs when you have you got a couple of pearlers that you want to share with us just on the way out, that your fave responses.
Just off the cuff, Mike. Look, one of my favourites was, this is just more bizarre than anything. Let's probably remember it because it was just so bizarre, but I was interviewing this woman and she was a retailer, and I'll keep this story brief, but she was talking about how people are becoming so unreasonable. Customers are becoming unreasonable. I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, I'll give you an example of it. And basically she'd had an item of clothing on the rack outside the store. It was like $158. This woman's come by, wants to buy it for $150. She said, no, it's $158. And the woman said, well, can't you discount it? She said, well, I've already discounted it. That's why it's $158. And the woman said, if you don't sell that to me for $150, I'm going to put a spell on you. Right. And the woman was with her daughter, and her daughter's gone, oh, Mum, don't please. So she's put this spell on this woman, right? This business owner I was interviewing, Mike, I kid you not. And I said to her, what did you say? And she said, oh, well, it was very easy what to tell. I said, love, you've 25 years too late. I had a spell put on me when I bought this bloody business 25 years ago.
Nothing could be worse, eh?
Just classic business owner behaviour,
Yeah. But still there and punching and holding up, her values and her pricing. That's an
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Hey, Ross, there's a power of stuff we could have chatted to, but I really appreciate your time. The idea of today was just you are in and out of conversations with SME owners, and so what you talk about today has been just a great, refreshing insight, and I hope that kind of helps with some of the people listening, organisations listening in, that it's a wonderful area of opportunity to service better, but take account of some of the things Ross has kind of outlined, because it isn't purely rational. It's a bit emotional. It's a bit on the fly rather than everything strategically planned. So excellent. Thank you so much for your time today, Ross. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, mate. Terrific.
All the best. So that's all for today's episode of Small Business Banter. I continue to be inspired, bringing you small business experts and other small business owners and hearing their stories. If you want to listen to any past episode, jump onto your podcast platform of choice and search Small Business Banter. There you will find a diverse and fascinating collection of small business owners and experts openly discussing and sharing their experiences. For any of the links, resources, or information we've talked about on the show today, or to contact me, please head over to smallbusinessbanter.com, or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. And it would be great to have you tune in the same time next week for another episode of Small Business Banter.